everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest, and especially since I live in Arizona, our guests are from Arizona. We have Pastor Matt Statler, and we have WorldVenture alumni Alice Statler. It looks like they're a little bit frozen, so they'll be on just as soon. There we go. They'll be back, I promise. Anyway, we have a very special guest today. And while we are interviewing this guest, we want to encourage you to ask your questions in the chat, to comment, and don't worry about if we've moved on to another topic. You can still ask your question. As we wait for Pastor Matt and Alice to come back up, Pastor Matt pastors a church in Sierra Vista, Arizona. And it's Sierra Vista Baptist Church. And I've put the links in the chat. I've also put the links to the Sierra Vista Biblical Counseling Center. That's something we're going to talk about today. So as we wait for Pastor Matt and Alice to get back on, just become prepared with your questions. These tech issues sometimes do happen. So we will just... He will be on momentarily. So those of you who have joined us, Pastor Matt and Alice have actually lost connection, so they'll be on momentarily. But I am very pleased to have them on for our interview today. And we will wait and see if they get on when they get on. I think they're having connection issues getting on. Let's see what happens. So bear with us, everybody. We just had them on and they lost connection. But for those who have just joined, Pastor Matt Statler is the pastor of Sierra Vista Baptist Church in Arizona. Oh, here he comes. And we will let him in. There we go. There they are. I just did an introduction of you online, and we've got a fair number who have decided to join us. Once again, thank you, Matt, for joining us. Thank you, Alice, for joining us. I was been looking forward to this. I mean, not only because I'm biased, because I live in Arizona too, but also because you guys are doing some amazing ministry. In fact, Alice and I were joking with each other that at WorldVenture, there's no such thing as retirement. They retire, just go into another season of ministry. So we're kind of going to go over some of that today. So let's start with you, Alice.
Okay.
Describe the process, how you and your husband decided to go about serving with WorldVenture in Senegal.
Well, I grew up in Morenci, Arizona, and went to First Baptist Church of Clifton, which was a conservative Baptist church. And conservative Baptist churches are always mission focused, and I got to hear missionaries all through my life, and we would get the packets of missionary letters, and I would find my mother almost every morning reading those missionary letters, and then she started sharing them with me. And it usually was our family that had the missionaries come to eat dinner with us after they spoke. So it was kind of a lifelong connection with missions. And then when I became a Christian, of course, the Holy Spirit started opening my eyes to the rest of the world. And then I went to Southwestern Baptist Bible College in Phoenix, and we had mission prayer bands. And so I was involved with that. And so I think just the connection with missionaries through the years. And then, of course, studying the Bible. I became an elementary teacher, and my goal was always to go overseas and teach in a missionary children's school. So as soon as I got my degree, I was going to go to somewhere. I wanted to go to Europe or to Asia or somewhere. I did not want to go to Africa.
What's that song? Please don't send me to Africa.
Please don't send me to Africa.
Any particular reason, if I may ask?
What?
Any particular reason, if I may ask?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we had a missionary. Well, I knew Senegal was somewhere in Africa, and because we'd had a missionary who had his first term, he came to speak at Southwestern College, and he had just finished his first term, and it was very, very hard. Senegal was 95% Muslim, and he had trouble learning the language. And you don't just learn one language when you go to Senegal. You had to learn French, and then you have to learn, usually you had to learn Wolof or Serer or another tribal language. And he wasn't good in languages. And so he had just had a very discouraging term. And then he showed us the ugliest pictures in the world of just these big sand dunes. And I'm like, oh, okay, that. So when I applied right out of college to go teach at a missionary children's school, I put everywhere on the globe except Africa. But then I got a phone call, and they said, well, all these other places that you're looking at, they actually have a full staff. So there's one place that we really need them. And I just knew in my heart it was going to be Senegal. And and I said, okay, all right, I surrender. So I was teaching at Dakar Academy for 2 years. And then I knew that everything that I had presumed would be horrible was not really horrible. It was amazing to see God at work. And it was a hard place because there were very few believers at that time. And in fact, our missionaries had come there in 1962, and they had worked for 20 years. And then they finally started their first church with 7 believers after 20 years, and of seeing a lot of heartbreak and just, but persevering through it all. And by the time I got there in 1975, there was a little tiny fledgling church that our missionaries had started in Thiès. And it was just an amazing thing to watch how excited the missionaries were. They had 7 believers. It was wonderful, and just to see how God kept them during that time. And so then I came home and I went to seminary, and I applied again. And this time I did apply to go back to Senegal and to work with Muslim lycée girls, high school girls, and evangelism. And in language school, when I was in France learning French, I met my husband. He was a missionary in Italy. He had been raised in a conservative Baptist church in Tucson, and he had gone to Western Seminary. I went to Denver Seminary. He went to Western Seminary, and we met. And long story short, it was like love at first sight. But he also had been exposed to missions all through his life, and had gone on a mission trip when he was in seminary to Quebec, and he was, I think, kind of looking at that. But in the end, he ended up in Italy for 10 years, and loved it. But they did evangelism on the streets of Rome like for 10 years. It was pretty amazing. Anyway, so when we became engaged, we didn't know if we would be in Italy or if we would be in Senegal. And we just prayed about it because we were engaged for 2 years. We fell in love fast, but we had to wait a long time to get married. So we were waiting to find out where the Lord would lead us. And he came to visit Senegal. And then, of course, I had been to Italy. And we were just praying about it. And it just seemed like the Lord opened the door for us to come back as a couple to Senegal. And that's how we got there.
Awesome. So how long did you serve in Senegal before you retired?
Well, let's see. Like I said, I went in 75 and I retired in 2016. But not all those years, of course, were in Senegal. We went as a couple in 1986. We got there in 86. And then my husband got cancer and died. We were married. We got to be married 20 years. And Matt was 19, and Our daughter was 15, and but he died in 2004. So in October, it'll be 20 years. It'll be 20 years since he went on to heaven. And so, yeah.
But you went back after he died.
Yeah, I went back. The mission was not putting any pressure on me, and I just took a year to pray and seek the Lord. And I just felt like that my job wasn't finished. So my daughter and I went back. Matt, by that time, had joined the Army, much against his parents.
Not a sore subject.
It was kind of a sore subject, but anyway. But anyway, yeah. But I did go back, and then my daughter graduated from high school there, and in Dakar, and we were living in Dakar at the time, so that made it easier for her to graduate from Dakar Academy. Plus, the Bible school that my husband had been the director of, and that I was still very much involved with, was in Dakar at the time. But by the time she graduated, we had been able to get property out by Chess. And so it made more sense for after she went to college for me to go to Chess to be more involved in the Bible college. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So question for both you and Matt. What were your fondest memories of living in Senegal?
You want to do this?
Yeah, I can do mine.
Yeah, do yours.
Yeah, for me, it was the beach. Definitely the beach, and then food. Shawarmas and ceviche and poulet yassa. And then, of course, being able to be on the beach was a lot of fun. Now I live in Arizona. So no beach.
No, it is beach.
Got a lot of sand.
All sand. No beach, all sand. Yeah, but that's probably my fondest memories.
Oh, I have so much. Of course, anywhere you live, there's things that you don't like. But in general, I love the people. They have a value in their culture of hospitality and friendliness. And when you get to know them, if you get to be friends with them, they have really great senses of humor.
Yep.
It's a lot of fun.
That's what I have for What Do I Miss?
You miss that.
All the laughing and the joy.
The laughing. Yeah, we had fun. We also missed the beach. Our mission has a beach house still there, still being used in ministry. And my husband, along with his many other jobs, was in charge of maintenance of that. And we did a lot of scheduling for events and things. And then we could go there on our days off or vacations. Other missionaries did too, but it was used mainly for ministry. Anyway, so yeah, those were things that were wonderful. But I'd have to say, looking back, the thing that I loved was when I had students, like in my spiritual growth class, and I got to hear their testimony. My understanding of the Lord grew because I saw how he had worked in their lives, and I had students from Ivory Coast and different places, but a lot from Senegal as well. And many of them had been Muslim. But to see how God drew these people to himself was amazing. And I always cry.
Yeah, you should
But
cry.
I should cry because it was so wonderful. Anyway, and then when I was able to, this had always been our plan. My husband had become the director of the Bible Institute, and he had gotten his doctorate, and we were trying to get like a lot of credibility for the school. And after my kids were raised, I was going to devote myself full time to developing a women's track. Well, I did get to do that afterwards, and we started something that we called Lois training, Formation Lois. We called it Lois training, and we told the ladies, Lois was the grandmother of Timothy, the mother of Eunice, and they were faithful to train him up. And that's what we did with for the ladies. We developed a discipleship training course for them. And when we first started, and I guess it's continuing like this, but when we first started, we had women that had been to college, So very high level education. We had women who couldn't read, a lot of women from the villages who couldn't read, some who could read a little bit, and some who could, was somewhere in between. So to develop the curriculum for that was amazing, to be able to do that. But to watch the growth in the women, it was so much fun. And we would do it in the form of retreats. We started out as retreats. It is continuing today. And some of the Senegalese women are now the main teachers. Laura Newkirk is mainly the overseer for it, and plus she's the one that has a vehicle, so they can go somewhere, so they can get there. They go to the villages, and but Laura herself is a master teacher, and but we've got some Senegalese women who are way better at this now, because they know their culture, they know their language way better than we ever could. And so, yeah, it's been a cooperative thing, and it's wonderful. I guess it's in a number of villages now. So that's exciting.
Awesome.
So I miss those women, and some who are like who've become like family. They're like daughters to me, so.
You still keep in contact with them and all?
Yes, not as much as I should. So, yeah, I'm going to take big gifts when I go back so that they will forgive me for.
What about you, Matt? Any fond memories?
Yeah, beyond the beach and the food. But yeah, what I miss is, culture, friendly people, lots of laughing, joy. You go to a country, a third world country or majority world country, whatever we're calling it now, and it's just they're destitute, but they're laughing, they're having fun, and you come to a first world country and people are mad when the AC doesn't, go cool enough. It's just such a difference. They can have joy in the worst circumstances. Well, even in the best circumstances, the people here can't have any joy.
Yep. Yeah, I have found that to be true in my own limited experience, that there's just such happy people in those developing countries. But
I don't want to diminish the fact that they have a deep spiritual need.
That's right.
And they live a lot in fear as well.
That's right.
So the fear, and Jesus is the answer. So, just presenting Christ, and it is amazing to see who God is drawing to Himself. The church has really taken off. I mean, we would have Easter sunrise service with 20 people, and now, but there's churches everywhere now in Senegal. And among the Wolof, it is still pretty small, but it has grown too. So, and that's what's amazing. But among the Serers, they're like in the thousands now. So, and They have, big conferences. They have the big Pentecost conference, and they've had it at the beach where they have hundreds come. So it's really wonderful.
Yeah, I follow the Newkirks, and I follow some Marilyn Escher and all that, their newsletters, and their stories coming out of Senegal are just amazing.
Yes.
I think my favorite is the Formation Lois, but
Thank you.
I especially love following those stories from the Newkirks. Mary Ann Latin is on, and she says, "So glad to watch this." So welcome everybody who's just joined. So let's talk about where you are at both now. You're at Sierra Vista Baptist Church. And what is the spiritual landscape of Sierra Vista, and what are the ministry opportunities?
Yeah, so Sierra Vista is southeastern Arizona. It's near the border of Mexico. Fort Huachuca is right here. It's about 50K population, 55K population. I think it's mixed spiritually. A lot of cults, Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, Catholics, and then I would say there's a lot of transient younger families, military families, then there's retirees, and then there's those who work either on post or more in the rural area, so the cowboys and farmers, and then a lot of homesteading is happening,
Mhm.
at least around where we're at. So there's also been an increase in Wiccan activity, a lot of satanic rituals as well. And I don't know where it's coming from besides just lostness. But yeah, that's the spiritual landscape. There's lots of churches in Sierra Vista, some healthy, some very unhealthy, and then some outright heretical. And so it is kind of a smorgasbord
Mhm.
of options. And part of the problem is you have long-term folks, and then you have transient folks, and being able to reach both can be challenging at times.
Yeah, a variety of audience. So it's really hard to, I would imagine, to
Mhm.
figure out your programs and messages with that going on. Um, so tell me, you're an Army vet. So can you briefly share your testimony about how you walked away from the Lord and how He brought you back to Him? It's on the bio, but give us a short version.
Yeah, absolutely. So came back to the States. I'd always wanted to be in the military. I did a semester at the University of Arizona in 2003. I said, man, this whole Iraq war thing is going to be over by the time I get out of college. So I said, I got to join right away. I went and joined, went to basic, deployed pretty much a month after my advanced training to Iraq. That was from '04 to '05. And then basically from '04 to '05, '06 to '08, 9 to 10, and 11 to 12, I deployed to Iraq. So somewhere within an 8 year period, I deployed for about 45 months total. And so it's kind of a year on, year off, 15-month on, year off, back to backs. And my dad died of cancer on my first deployment. And so that was quite a challenge. And that's really where I started to question, what I believed. And it wasn't so much that I didn't believe that God existed. It was more just a general angst, anger that he would take my dad. And then I'm surrounded by guys who deal with their struggles in the old military fashion, right? Drinking, chasing women, and anger, the normal military things that we hear about. And so that's kind of how I started doing it. I started having night terrors at night, really, really bad anger, depression, suicidal ideations. And just that whole cycle was beginning to really, really kick in. And just not living for the Lord in any meaningful sense. I wouldn't take the Lord's name in vain. I had moral standards, quote unquote, for that, but that was about it. And really just lived my life how I wanted to, which really just led to a really dark time in my life. It was, devastating for me.
Mhm.
And so the Lord continued to let me spiral in order to get me, as the psalmist says, it was good that I was afflicted that I may learn your statutes. Right. So it was good. He afflicted me greatly. Lost a lot of friends. I was a cavalry scout in the Army. So we did a lot more kinetic combat situations, a lot of patrols. And just like anti-terrorism, anti-IED missions, and things like that, room clearing and the like, a lot of fighting. And then my last deployment, before my last deployment, Jessica found me, and I got married and deployed pretty much right away. When I came back, I was drinking. I would put drink in my coffee before I went to my job in the Army. Right before I went running, I would get drunk, and it was just a really dark situation. Finally, my wife said, "Hey, you got problems, and you need to get them fixed." Right, and she kind of gave me an ultimatum, like get fixed or else. And I don't know what else was, but it sounded pretty serious. So I did. I went to the to the medical doctor. He said, "Hey, you have all these things, right?" Gave you the laundry list of all the psychological names, complex PTSD, suicidal ideations. I think he said borderline personality disorder in there,
Bipolar.
but bipolar was the big one. And that's really what started the medical. He also diagnosed several other people in my unit with bipolar. So, which is such a rare disorder, anyways. It's odd that. So I don't know. Anyways, not important. And that started my med board, my medical out processing. I went to the VA, VA said, you know what, you have complex PTSD, you don't have all these weird things. But I'd already been given a ton of medication with the Army, and so that medication, of course, is a drastic measure. And so so I started going to the VA, and when I was in the VA, I was ready to get better, right? So I said, I'll do whatever you give me. You want me to take medication? I'm taking medication. You want me to go to goat yoga on Thursday nights? I'm going to goat yoga on Thursday nights. Like whatever, like give me the solution, right? And so I was dedicated. I was reading the books they told me to read. I was doing it. As I'm talking to these doctors, they're telling me stuff like, this is your new normal. You need to learn how to adapt. And then I'm going to college. In college, I'm at a Christian college, but only because of convenience. It's right there. My wife and I started going to a church, and just really starting to plug in spiritually to things. And really, during that period of time, I'm sitting in chapels in my undergrad. I'm studying exercise science, and I got a book on prayer by Tim Keller. I started reading through that. He had daily set office hours, and in those daily set office hours, he talks about the Psalms. And I've read the Psalms. I've read the Bible many times, but I opened up the Psalms, and it was like a whole new vista has opened up to me, right? Because I'm seeing David struggling with the exact same things that I've been struggling with, right? He's crying on his bed in bed of tears. It sounds like he's having night terrors. It sounds like he's got anxiety or fear, whatever you want to call it. And so all that stuff became, God convicted my heart, and I started repenting, turning away from things, apologizing to my wife, just really, Lord just utterly crushed me, humbled me. At school, I'm sitting in chapel after about a year, and I'm thinking, I've started to feel this call towards some kind of ministry, and I've been resisting it. Lord, you got the wrong guy. I got tattoos. Like all the superficial things. But I just started resisting it. Finally, I'm in chapel. I don't even remember what the person was saying. But basically I said, no, I got to surrender. I need to do this. So when I switched my degree plan, much to my wife's chagrin, because she's like, you really need to get a degree or we're going to be destitute. And, so switched to Christian ministry, and then several things happened right at that moment. There was a program that they had just announced about how to mentoring in ministry. So they'd get you into a church that needed pastoral staff, and then they would pay for you, and then you would go once a month and get additional mentoring one-on-one with proven practitioners. And that got me into a church, Taylor's Valley Baptist Church. And while I was there, I was the youth pastor intern, and then that was perfect for my speed. I could have fun, right, and not be responsible for anything. But then quickly moved into the youth pastor role, youth minister role, and then also started doing some military ministry, biblical counseling, got involved with Mighty Oaks warrior programs, and started on that process. And then all through that, went to Southern Seminary, focused on biblical counseling for my training. And near the end of my time at Southern, I really began to feel maybe a holy satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Something just wasn't right, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't put my finger on it. Talked to different guys, and just ultimately decided, no, I think I'm called to pastoral ministry. So that's kind of the short version of how all this came about.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So what's amazing to me is that the same church that supported you, Alice,
yes,
now your son leads as the head pastor. How long have you been pastoring Sierra Vista?
So September 1st was 5 years.
5-year anniversary.
Yeah. Okay.
And something about my mom is my mom and dad were anchors or heroes of the faith to me. Just their faithfulness to the Lord, their love for the Lord. It was an example that that's the kind of life that I want to live, their relationship. That's the kind of marriage that I want. Those kind of things were always anchor points, even when I was acting like a buffoon and living the way that I was. So that's a huge part of this is them as well.
Thank you.
So I remember having potlucks at Sierra Vista Baptist Church in the basement, the same ones that we're having the same basement we're having potlucks in now. And I just remember all those things. And Sierra Vista Baptist Church made us their Christmas missionaries. There's a lot of fond childhood memories here.
We had relatives that were basically founding members of this church like 60 years ago or 70 years ago. Yeah. And then my husband's parents, mother and stepdad, went here for a number of years. When they retired, they lived here and went to this church. And they were just such faithful givers. They've always had a super missionary focus, and that's one of the things I loved about this church.
And when you left the mission field, they had a big party for you.
They had a party, yeah.
Made a big cake, I think.
Yeah, I had pictures of that. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, it's.
And some of the elders that are on my board right now knew me when I was a toddler.
They gave me a baby shower. You were here in the womb.
I was here in the womb. I had a baby shower here.
Yeah, he had a baby shower here.
So I was basically born to this church, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Angela Paisley says, we're so thankful to have the Statlers here.
Oh, that's sweet.
We're thankful to have Angela here.
Yeah, especially with our Sparks.
Yes, she's a Sparks leader in the Awana. They have an amazing Awana program here. It's been going on for 35 years, I think. 35 years they've had Awana, and they have like 60 kids that are coming, and they will be here like in an hour.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, yeah.
So tell me, what are some of because you've experienced the mental health system in Arizona, what are the strengths and weaknesses of our current mental health care system that you experience? And the second part of this question is, how can believers who work in the secular field better help our veterans and others experiencing mental health issues and trauma, especially in places where Jesus isn't mentioned, but spirituality is?
Yeah, that's such an excellent question. And to start this off, the people that were trying to help me, they loved people. They knew hurting people. They wanted to help hurting people. Like that's what made them tick. And so I'm forever grateful that that's what they were about, right? They weren't trying to use me as some kind of prop for them. So I really appreciate that. But the problem is, in the secular world, there's an undergirding philosophy that undergirds mental health, just the name of it itself. And it's counter really to a lot of what the Bible teaches. So, you have these caring people, but they're approaching and trying to help people from a purely secular worldview. And, you mentioned spirituality. The spirituality piece really is Eastern mysticism, right? Yoga, acupuncture, meditation, a lot of the empty your mind, some Buddhist practices. And now there's starting to be a little bit of Greek Stoicism that's working its way into some of the philosophies, which is fascinating. But, as Christians, we say that humans are created, right? So we're created beings. We're not evolved beings, right? So as I'm going there, they're telling me I have this lizard brain or ape brain. And the reason I'm acting the way I am is because of evolutionary process, right? All these various ideas, which, and once again, I just want to say, they know what they know, right? They're working out of their worldview. But as Christians, what's proper functioning, right? What's our example? What are we created to look like? And we're supposed to look like Christ. Like that's what we are created for. He's the God man. He's the image that we're supposed to be formed into. And so, as we know that our telos, because sin deformed us, our telos is to be our end point is to be Christ-like and to grow into all aspects of Christ-likeness in our being, right? Proper cognitive functioning, effective functioning, volitional, thinking, feeling, and doing. And so because they can only observe from a materialistic perspective, they're going to have maybe really good observations and descriptions of what's going on, but really poor prescriptions. What is actually wrong with us. And so, when the Lord did his work for me and I started really going through this process, studying the Bible, I still had to go to the VA for a lot of counseling because they didn't want me to fall off the map. And so I just started having fun with my doctors, and I would just ask them questions like, well, what are you trying to change me into? And they would be like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, we're here because you want me to change, right? Because what I'm doing isn't working. They're like, yeah. They're like, well, we want you to get back to the way you were before. And I said, I was a selfish jerk before. I don't want to go back that way, right? And they were like, okay, well, we want to help you cope, right? And so I'm probably the most annoying patient. But they're like, we want to help you cope, and I was like, well, that sounds hopeless, right? Just coping, and
Yeah, he is like that.
so it was fun. But I was like, I would respond, I want to grow in Christ likeness. I need the newness and this new hope. So they mark it down. They say that I have some kind of psychosis, right? And some kind of religious psychosis, as Freud would say. And all the goals they're presenting to me really are the best the VA had to offer, right? And as I said, it's band-aids on a sucking chest wound, right?
Yeah.
They're offering what they can. So what I would say to believers is a lot depends on the state that they're in, right? If they're licensed, there's only so much you can say. I often describe people who have been traumatized as exhibiting a lack of peace and a lack of hope. And for the Christian, Christ is our peace and our hope, right? We have nothing else to offer anybody. Christ is true peace and true hope. So, I would say that we must bring Christ to traumatized people, to suffering people, the struggling people of this world. And so, because I believe that the Bible teaches that we have everything we need for life and godliness, is what 2 Peter 1 tells us. Mm-hmm. So I really believe that's what he means. I don't think there's any way around it. So, the caveat is that I haven't engaged with is that many people think that mental health professionals base their help on studying brain or biological causes. And that's often not the case, right? So there's a difference between biological struggles and emotional or soul struggles, right? Psychology, the soul.
Yeah.
So, when people say mental, they're meaning the non-biological processes. And so when we think about mental health, it's the question is, well, what is mental? What's thinking? And when the Bible talks about the heart, it talks about your thinking, your feeling, and your doing, your cognitive, your affective, and your volitional. Like, this is the heart that we have. So really, and I don't want to get into the history of these things because I know that it can get complicated. But Freud, he started his practice on Easter Sunday so that they would have secular priests, right? That was the main goal, so that people who are struggling do not have to go to the priest. And anyways, that's not important. But God and his Holy Spirit is what changes us, and we're called to sanctification. It's a means of grace, right? The Holy Spirit empowers us to change. So long answer short, really. Believers should give suffering people Jesus because he's our only hope. And however you can do that in your context, I have a brother that I love dearly who is in a mental health profession, and he is licensed and all those good things. And he talks about Christ when he gets an opening for it, right? He'll start spiritual, kind of like you brought up. And then when he finds out they're Christian, then he moves into Christianity, and he's allowed to do that. If he had a private practice, he would be even more free to offer that. But that's why I counsel from church, right? Because I think counseling is a form of discipleship.
Pastoral
duty. It's a pastoral duty, it's soul care. And I think it's for the church, by the church, and from the church. And I think, we as believers and churches have kind of thrown off our duty. And instead of stepping into what is really the messy parts of the world and saying, look, the Bible is sufficient for life and godliness. We have our hope in Jesus. Christ can deal with these problems, these non-organic problems in our life, and really some of our organic. We don't want to go too far, right? But the reality is we have this hope. And so, so I think there's a big import in this topic, in this conversation, because so many people are assuming that mental health professional means something, and I don't think they're understanding what exactly it means. And so, so I think for us, well, I know for me and all the veterans that I've counseled, 10 minutes to a week of counseling with the scriptures and giving them Christ does more for them than 10 to 20 years of psychology. Man, and let me share, there was a man that came to me and basically said he had been in therapy for 20 years for this survivor's guilt. Man, I had a 10-minute conversation with this guy. 10 minutes. We talked about the conscience. We talked about being born again, the need for a renewed conscience, and how his standard was broken. All these things. We prayed. He gave his life to the Lord. Man, that dude called me multiple times, sent me messages, said, "Hey, just want you to know, I'm at this church. My family's at this church, and we're following Jesus. And it's all because no one's ever prayed with me before. No one ever talked to me about this." So the reality is there's hope. But if I was a psychologist, what would be my approach with this man? I would continue on. And so anyways, that's my hobby horse. You guys can hear that in my voice.
That's why he started the Biblical Training Center here. And he's on the fourth group.
Yeah. So we offer the fundamentals, and that's the first phase in certification with the Biblical Counseling Association.
And this year, for the first time, they're doing some of the students are on Zoom. They're able to join on Zoom.
Yeah.
So describe this biblical counseling. Describe it to the audience. What is the benefit? What do you offer if someone were looking into it?
Yeah. So because I believe that Scripture is sufficient for life and godliness, how do we help people who are struggling? How do we do the one another's, right? We as a church are called to one another, to love one another, to do all these, carry each other's burdens, right? I think there's 108 or something like that. But all these one another's that we're called to do, how do we do that, right? And we're equipped. The man of God is equipped for every good work, according to Paul to Timothy. And so what we have done is we have a fundamentals course. It's about 31 hours, 30 hours. It includes topics like anger, fear, worry, depression, trauma, suffering, parenting, marriage. The list goes on. But all these topics, and then how do we counsel, right? How do we help someone who is struggling? And we do that under sort of the certification of ACBC, the Association of Certified Biblical Counselors. And the whole phase, that there's 3 phases. It's a lot longer of a process because there's observation. They would have to observe counseling from a certified counselor. And then there's a supervision phase if they want to get certified. But I just tell my church friends, just come to the counseling course. It's really just intense discipleship or remedial discipleship. It just helps you when you're at the coffee shop, or you're drinking coffee with your friend, and they say, I had a really rough day. My husband said he doesn't want to be married to me anymore. What do you say? Do you give secular wisdom, or do you give biblical wisdom? Because we're all going to give wisdom. We're all going to say something, right? When your teenage daughter says, I'm a guy, and you're like, how do I help you? How do I give her biblical wisdom, right? If you say the follow your heart from Disney, well, that's going to lead to more pain and suffering than I think I've seen in anything else. So, so it's just equipping. It's a form of discipleship. It's a form of equipping. And the beauty of it is, a lot of the people that I counsel one-on-one, or as my buddy says, kneecap to kneecap, they go into the biblical counseling training because they're like, this has had such an impact in my life. I want to be able to do that for others. Yeah. And that's I think a big part of how our church is maturing as well.
Yeah, I think
I think that's what brought a lot of people to our church.
Yeah, he's had other pastors, other churches, and you've had some missionaries, and
a lot of elders from other churches, a lot of missionaries.
Yeah. So and now people in other states are zooming in.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So you created this program?
So there's certain requirements to be certified as a training center. There's nothing new under the sun. A lot of the material I had in my lectures in seminary that I've rewritten for our context. various things that I do, I put into practice, stuff I've borrowed from other lectures and things like that, other biblical counselors. But I mean, really, what we're doing is we're taking the Bible and applying it to life. So, one example is I had someone come to me that I have had several people come to me diagnosed with bipolar. And we were able to look at Ecclesiastes 2. And we walked through Ecclesiastes 2, and they're like, this is me. This is what my life looks like. I have these ups and these downs. I have, my high points and my low points. My high points, I get sad. And so to get out of being sad, I find all these high points to do. I get up, I spiral up into like a mania phase, and then I crash, right? Because it's worthless. It's nothing. It's garbage. And that's what Solomon says, vanity of vanities.
Yeah.
Until you use the word to break that cycle. And so how do we deal with our sadness, right? How do we deal with being sad? Do we lament? Do we take the Psalms and pray the same things that David did? I mean, that's the songbook that the Lord gave his people, right? So let's use it to break these cycles of hyper and up and then going and crashing back down. And if we can deal with the low point, we don't get all the way. And eventually, they kind of level out. So, all we're doing is saying, this is what the Bible teaches: is systematic theology, practical theology, and historical theology, because I love the Puritans, right? So we mix match all these things together, and then we exegete the scripture, where we pull out of the scripture and we study what it says, and then we learn, man, this is how we help people, right? And so we apply the Bible to their lives.
That is awesome. So if a church wanted to create this program, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I would tell the elders, it begins with the elders, right? Because I believe in the supremacy of the local church. I would say if you're an elder, or get your elders on board, but get your elders through some fundamentals, get them trained. You have to have a certified counselor doing the teaching. They have some options for male and female. There's some distinctions there, but yeah, you have to have someone certified doing the training. And then there's a lot of different people out there that are willing to help set up that biblical counseling program. ACBC
and online.
And yeah, ACBC. They offer lots of helps for that. And so like the staff over there, they're small but mighty, and they do a lot of work. And they helped us get set up, and we just contacted another training center and said, hey, help us get equipped. And they did, and they spent the time to help us. And so, I think it took us about a year to get fully up and running, but I had been doing it for many years prior. So, but yeah, I would say get the elders involved, get your elders go through some training, fundamentals course. There's all sorts of fundamentals, the biblical counseling website. You can go on and find training near you. They have online options, and really a phenomenal program, even if you're just curious.
One thing I think is exciting is it's gone international now. A group of Mexican pastors have gotten some training, and they're trying to have a center as well. Yeah. And they contacted Matt, and he went to one of their conferences. Yeah. And but yeah, they're getting training. It's a lot of the materials are in Spanish, so they can use it, but they're getting some trained pastors to do it, and spreading it into the Mexican churches. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Sandy Wilcox asked, do you need to have a bachelor's before getting certified or licensed?
Nope. No, you don't. Biblical counseling is for all of us, and you don't have to have some kind of degree in order to do it. The more you study your Bible, the better.
All right, so we're getting close to the end of our time, and we've got to get to Alice. So Alice, as we talked about earlier in our broadcast, I've been inspired from my own WorldVenture colleagues, those active and retired, because retirement means a lot different than retirement of my friends. And so tell me, now that you're in a new season of ministry, because WorldVenture has a training program that helps people figure out their new season of ministry. And so what is your season of ministry right now?
Well, I knew before I retired that I wanted to move close to my children, and they were all in Texas, and my grandchildren, and I wanted to be able to help out in caring for my grandkids, so that because my daughter-in-law has to work. She's a dental hygienist, and she had a full-time job, um, and Matt, of course, was in ministry and training for ministry, and now in ministry. And so it has been my privilege to help raise my grandkids, and have had a preschool for the little ones. The three of them are now in school, and now I just have the baby that's left. He's 4, and I have him 3 or 4 days a week. And so that has been a main thing. And then I started doing, because I've always loved Christian education and the role of training children and everything. I was able to start a children's church as soon as we got here to Sierra Vista Baptist. And now that we have a lot more members, I have a lot of helpers, which is wonderful. And so we're having we have children's church, we have nursery. I'm not in charge of that, but I do the children's church. And then so that has been wonderful to be able to put into the lives of the families in the church as well. And then, of course, like I said, we do have Awana, and Matt's whole family's involved in that. So that's been wonderful. But I've also been able to, this is something I got into in Texas, at our church in Texas, was grief share, because of having lost my husband and having gone through all that grief. And then, but I never had been through a grief share program, but I did when I retired. And it turned out it was very helpful, and it would have been very helpful for me as well. And so I started doing it in Texas. And then when we came here, Matt asked me if I would start some here. So we've done it 3 times, and it's been a wonderful blessing for a number of people, and especially for me. I get something out of it every time, because every person is their journey is unique, and but the answer is the same, which is the Lord and the Word of God, and time, and just talking with some understanding people. So yeah, those 2 main things have been my ministry since I retired, and just being a part of the church. And I'm on the missions committee, all 3 of us. Yeah.
Awesome. So tell me about, we're going to go a little bit backwards here, but, how did you and your family come around Matt as he struggled with PTSD? How did it test your faith?
Well, being so far away, and he was also very good at hiding what he was going. He did not let me know. I didn't know nearly what he had gone through, or what he was going through. I did know some, and it just threw me more into prayer, more than ever in my life, I think. And I just prayed for him. And when I got a chance to talk to him, I would talk to him. And I was the one that gave him the book on prayer that he said helped him so much, but he forgot that. That's okay. I'm just reminding him for all the world to know right now.
Yeah. And it's recorded forever. So
it's recorded now. It's recorded now.
I'll never forget.
Now he won't forget. So anyway, yeah. And it was wonderful to watch the Lord work. It's true how the Holy Spirit works. It is like the wind. You can't tell where it comes, and you cannot predict when that's going to happen and when that heart is going to be ready. But his heart was ready, and the Lord drew him back to himself. He knew the Lord, but he just had been ignoring him, and he came back. So that was wonderful.
And it's amazing. It's amazing what you two are doing in Sierra Vista. It's amazing, Matt, with your testimony coming back and what you've started with this biblical counseling, which, by the way, everyone, the link is there. It's svbctc.org if you want to look into it. But do tell us, we often get people who are online who don't go to church or having trouble finding a church home. Tell us about your church. When does it meet, and what does it offer for families?
Yeah, so 10 a.m. Sunday is our service time. 8:45 we have a men's and women's Bible study, and the children also have a study. She already mentioned children's church. We have Awana. I do an adult Bible study during Awana where I talk about some of these biblical counseling principles. We did suffering for a couple nights. We suffered through that, and then went into parenting. At some point, we have some parenting coming up. So we have that, and then every fall we offer the fundamentals training, and we do live stream the service. Though I would say I would much rather someone go to a local church near them in person and get preached to by a man who knows them, and that would be much better than listening to whatever I have to say from the Word on Sunday. So.
Are there any upcoming events or trainings that you want our audience to know about?
No, just the fundamentals are in the fall. That's kind of the main one. We do an October event where we harvest party. So if you're in the area, obviously come by and enjoy candy. I think we're doing a trunk or treat this year. It's going to be a little different, but we have bounce houses and stuff for kids. You know, one of the things that I love about our church is that we don't have any like special programs so much as we have disciples who make disciples. And so I think that's really a key in all of this.
We have had a women's retreat every year. Well, almost every year. I think we started at 21.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, in
this
21.
Is the third one.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. At November 2nd, we're having one, and we have a speaker, actually a woman who's a biblical counselor from Missouri. Her name is Julie Ganchow. You can look her up on YouTube. She's going to be our speaker, and it's been a wonderful time, and it's just a one-day retreat, and the cost is going to be $35. And you can register online. So if you're in Arizona and you would like to come to a women's retreat, come to Sierra Vista on November 2nd. So.
Awesome. So Matt, you're a pastor, a counselor, training and equipping people to reach the community, a podcaster, by the way, what was the name of your podcast?
The Gospel Lifeline.
Okay. And a father of how many kids?
4 kids.
4 kids. So how do you find?
I also teach Greek at the high school now too. So
just teaching Greek. Greek. Okay. Where do you find downtime?
So I have a superpower. Her name is Jessica.
Yes.
Yeah, my wife. She is Superwoman.
Yeah.
She wakes up before me and usually falls asleep after me. Like that's the kind of woman that she is.
And works full time.
And works full time.
Yeah.
One of the best women I've ever met. And not only that, my mom is a hero in my faith, but also she watches the kids in all the between times and things like that. And so really, I don't think I would be able to do near as much as what the Lord is calling me to do if it weren't for my wife and my mom, who just surround me, not only just with prayer, because they know, my wife is really good at giving me the right act when I go past my limits. And so, yeah, it's only possible because of them. I think because of the grace of God. So it sounds like a lot when you say it all out on paper. But the truth is, the Lord gives me the time. And one of the best ways he's done that is by giving me such a wonderful wife and a wonderful mom.
In fact, your wife is eavesdropping on our conversation.
Yeah, good. You're too kind. No, but it's true.
It is very true.
Yeah.
And she,
Thank
you know, what's
you.
wonderful about her is just her faith has just bloomed and
It
flourished, and
has. It's amazing.
I'm
Mhm.
humbled to know her,
Yes.
and that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So as you've heard, I have all the links to the church, to svbctc.org. And if you want to check them out, check them out. If you're watching this when the live stream is done and you still have questions, I will make sure to forward the questions to Matt and to Alice, whoever you direct it to. Other than that, I want to thank especially Matt and Alice for sharing their stories, sharing their heart with us, and inspiring the rest of us to get off our pew and do something.
Don't be a pew potato.
Exactly. Don't be a cute potato. I like that. Maybe adopt that one. So thank you everyone else who stayed with us and joined us. Thank you. And Alice and
Well,
Matt.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Nikki. That's been wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So I will bid you good evening, everyone. Matt and Alice, stay on with me.